Hello, everyone, and welcome back for Ready, Set, Shag episode number 18. We're doing 2 episodes in a row. It's not something I usually do. Usually we space them out by a week, but I've been slacking the past couple of weeks, made a few scheduling errors myself. And this conversation has been a long time coming anyway. So tonight we have Sleazy on with us. He's from he's been doing a lot of YouTubing recently. He's been making some videos along the lines of pop culture, commenting on things around the internet, and we had a disagreement on I don't know, maybe his love life. Is that how it came to be? I don't really know, but we'll bring him on and we can start this whole conversation because it's bound to get a little spicy at some point. Sleazy, my friend, how are you doing, sir?
Doing all right. I'm waiting for the spicy.
We're just gonna sprinkle it in. We're just gonna garnish with some spice.
Okay, I can do sprinkling.
But for people who don't know you, for those who are listening on other platforms, give us a little bio about yourself. What do you do? I mean, I gave them a quick rundown, but go a little bit more in depth about how you got started with YouTubing and just generally what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been on and off streaming for years. I have a Twitch somewhere. Damned if I remember how to use it. Started doing video games. I realized I cannot stream video games because I don't enjoy playing video games for money, we'll say. But I like bitching about stuff. So started doing YouTube, bitching about everything that's just making me angry and having a good laugh.
Okay. What is it that you like center on? What do you find yourself making content on the most recently?
I like making content on video games, talking about how terrible they've gotten. Movies, TV shows. I mean, just everything everybody's complaining about, but nobody, well, I say nobody, but not a lot of people are willing to say out loud.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we've found a lot of people now who seem to be very vocal. YouTube has become a very diverse place in that you could find just about any opinion you can think of on there. But certainly people become very vocal on entertainment, including movies and video games as of late. But it's good to see people, I think, just making that content because the everyday consumer, I think, is really starting to say, you know what? I'm going to comment on how bad I think this game is. It's not, I think they may or may not affect the sales, but their voice, I think, resonates with people. And that's how you get groups like, the Fellowship or anything else that people start, consuming each other's content and being like, oh, this is what so-and-so has to say about the new video game. It sucks, or, oh, it's really good, or oh, that movie was good, so I might go check it out. So, I mean, that's how I kind of got started with the gaming / like entertainment part of it. Was like, I want people to know the things that I like. And then if they decide to take my opinion and run with it, cool,
Yeah, it's there was a weird road for me to actually start making all these videos coming. It really started during the coup, but it's been a wild ride. YouTube's a weird place.
It sure is. What do you so really one of the big reasons we had you on, as I mentioned, was we had sort of a disagreement on how one could go about, I guess. Honestly, I don't even know how to formulate like how it began. Do you have a better way of describing how our discussion started?
I think I called you a boomer on dating
Oh,
advice.
okay. Yep. Yep. That's yes. Um, so let's start off by saying, like, you telling your side of like where you're at in the dating world and what the plans are. Because I think if we start there, we can sort of move through the conversation a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So essentially, where I'm at is I am abandoning. Well, we'll just say in general the West, or in terms of dating, to find a marriageable partner.
Mhm.
And I am planning 2 trips in the next 6 to 8 months. One's going to be the Philippines, one's going to be Thailand. I might bounce around a couple more times, but that is my overall plan: is to settle somewhere else.
How old are you?
34.
34. Okay. And so my advice was, I think if I'm remembering correctly, because my advice hasn't really changed much over the past couple of years, but my advice was essentially you should go find things that you enjoy doing and do those things, and you should find someone in spaces that, out in real life that, while you're enjoying, whether it's going to hobby shops or coffee shops or whatever, the library, which, saying it over again, like, I can see why you would call me a boomer as boomer advice,
Yeah.
but I still believe that it's one of the better options for people, because I think there's so many people in this country that, I think in my opinion, you could chalk it up to really bad luck that you're just stumbling across the absolute wrong people. I do think chimes have changed in the way that, like the idea of courting someone, or the process in which one courts another, has changed drastically, because a lot of it is like click and thumbs up or thumbs down or swipe left or right. We're minimizing that physical contact and the real social interactions that people have. But I guess in some regards, and I guess you're doing this on you'd be doing the same thing, but on a much more drastic scale, because you're leaving this country for another country in hopes to find that sort of relationship there. Is that kind of right?
Yeah. So, okay. So, trying to preface this and word this correctly. So, absolutely love women.
Yeah.
Don't take anything I say as I'm a woman hater and I hate all women. I hate the culture that women have created and their lack of, we'll just say, femininity. At least for the U.S. That that very may well end up in somewhere in Europe or somewhere else. Like I said, I'm taking a leap to look for someone who is more feminine and has feminine qualities that I look for in someone I would want to marry. And
Okay.
I have, I'm trying not to sound like an asshole here, but I have spent many years and been with many women, and I have the same complaints, and it's that women have lost, we'll say, the ability to be feminine, and haven't been taught how to treat a man, but been told what to expect from a man.
I do think you're partially right, but I do think that men are part of the dance. So I think we can accept some responsibility in that,
Oh,
even feeding into this sort of like postmodernist uh, uh, dating, I don't even
culture.
know. Yeah, culture. Yeah, there we go. Woof.
Yeah, no,
It's
and
late.
don't take anything I say as like it's all women's fault. It is absolutely as much men's fault as it is women's.
Yeah.
You'll have no arguments from me there.
Okay. But why? I mean, I guess the question just remained was like, what? You've heard the phrase, "the grass is always greener," on the other side. Um, don't you feel that you might be making a pretty big leap, only to discover that this cultural rot is elsewhere in the world too?
In some respects, yes. So I get you're saying that the grass isn't always greener on the other side, but the way I'm seeing, we'll say, the dating market in the US is that there is no grass. So if there is any sort of grass, I will be okay.
Well, it's a pretty. I guess my pushback to you was always like, that's a pretty black pill way of looking at it. I mean, because the reality is you haven't dated every woman in the United States. Had that been the case, I would be like, yeah, you should probably check out another country, because you've run them through them all. Um, like and it's something I would propose to, like, I guess my son. If you were my son, I would say, have you thought about, like, maybe really looking into maybe another part of the United States that would better just suit you as a person. Maybe you're just not living in the places that, best suit your beliefs and your values. Maybe if you had found that part, that you would find someone that does want to be a homemaker, wants to be sort of more of a traditional wife, not, this power hungry, fourth way feminist. Uh, I mean, that's something that if you were my flesh and blood, it might be something I would have you consider before. Is that something that you've thought about at all?
Do you want the list of states I've lived in and been through? And
Well, yeah,
so,
I mean, that's the next logical thing is, I guess, how many states have you lived in? Or have you seriously dated in at the very least?
so I'm 34. When I say I've dated and I've been through a lot of women, I legitimately mean that. We're not talking like 20, 50, 70. We're talking more than that. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
been from Texas, Maryland, Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. Um, and I would say that that's when we're talking about serious dating, I would say more than it's gone past the first date, right?
Hmm.
Because regardless of what people say, it is easy to sleep with chicks. It is hard to find a chick that is suitable to settle down with. And I think a lot of guys have the mindset of, we'll say, a scarcity mindset for women. And then they will absolutely settle down for someone who is incompatible with them, point blank. And I've almost made that mistake a few times.
Yeah, maybe. This- if I push too hard, you could tell me to stop. But I'm just treating you fairly, again, as if you're my flesh and blood, right? Like that's like when I think of stuff like this, I think this is one of those things I think we need to overcome in the long run, is understanding, like, in a relationship, we're playing the long game. We're not playing the short game. And from where I sit, you've played a lot of short game. Like how do you know that you've really, like, vetted these women? If it only a couple dates, like what has been the common thread that you've pulled through all of them that just makes you think there's no hope? Like they're not thinking long term. They're thinking, I'm trying to fill a void, legitimately and figuratively, and they're just hoping for the next, thing to come along, the next best thing to come along.
So there's so many answers to this. I'm going to pick an order to do them in. So the first date's usually always awkward, and you can usually tell how or what their interest is in you as a person and what they're looking for. Because as good as women are at pretending, they're also just as open in giving you little hints, right? So I spent 5 years in a restaurant, and the women there are, and I'm going to speak in generalizations, right? This isn't including exceptions or
Women in
weird
restaurants are
circumstances.
crazy. I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So lots of, let's say, naughty things going on at restaurants.
Yeah.
I spent a couple of years working at a bar, bartending and bouncing.
Mm.
Then I spent a couple more years DJing, right? So I've seen enough women in those first 7 to 8 years to know, like, that's not appropriate behavior. I know exactly what that leads to. And it's just, I mean, I think you understand what I'm saying. Like when women show the same signs, it's kind of like, okay, I know exactly what's going to happen with the next step. I've seen this enough times,
Yeah.
right? And it's going from there, and it's so many times I see that exact same repeated behavior, and it's just like I know that is a red flag. And occasionally I'd be like, okay, it wasn't. It's something. It's a red flag. I should keep an eye on it. And usually 3 to 6 months, it's like, yep, called it, nailed it. Same thing again.
Okay. I think there's. Did you have other reasons you want to go into, or are you going to stop, or is that?
I figured you had some comments for me after that one.
No, I mean, it's the black pill for me, and I understand the bad, like, there's such this like doom and gloom, like based on, and obviously you have to take your experiences into consideration, and that fuels like how you're perceiving reality. Like, oh, I've been down this road. I know I have a very, very good idea at where it leads me, and at some point, the a rational mind is going to think, I'm not willing to go down this road anymore, so I should just find a whole new area to explore. So I do get it. um, I don't know, without knowing you on a more personal level, it's hard to say like what you should do. Like, again, it feels like even just the first couple, evaluating those first couple of dates, it seems a little soon. But I mean, but I also, taking your age into consideration, you old bastard. There's, I mean, in my head, I would be thinking, like, I want to have kids. I don't want to be the 80-year-old parent, when my kid's graduating high school. I want to be able to do sports with them and help them out. And, so, I mean, I had kids late. I had kids when I was 33, 32, sorry. So it was later for me, but yeah.
Right, and it's interesting you keep calling it a black pill, right? Because I I'm not saying I'm leaving the dating market, period. I'm saying I'm just looking somewhere else for what my expectations are in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I know you made the comment that maybe my expectations are too high. And maybe they are, but I generally don't think they are, right? Like, I don't want someone who's been promiscuous. She doesn't have to be a virgin. I'm not asking for that at all. I don't care if she is or she isn't.
Mhm.
Verbally, if she isn't, it might be a little bit better, but uh, I would. My expectations are, if we have a kid, her time is spent in the house raising the kid until we both feel that they're old enough to be babysat or have someone else that can look after them. Right? That doesn't seem like a high expectation. Uh, right? I mean, tell me, do you think that's too crazy?
I think, I mean, here's my opinion on it, because I think I think it is in the modern age. And it doesn't mean that you can't find someone who wants to do that. I think there are women out there that want to do that. But I think what people need, their expectations need to be a blend of traditional and, I don't want to say the word progressive, but like, there's nothing wrong. And I think you and I could agree. There is nothing wrong with a career driven woman. I think the problem is the balance. Like, it's okay to have a driven woman. You want that. You want someone who's hungry the way you are. And in some ways, or, maybe in different ways though. Like, I still agree that men, to some extent, should go in with the mindset that you're the provider, and that you're the one that's going to take care of people. But I don't think that I don't think it's necessarily bad if, or I think women nowadays can do both, just by virtue of how far we've come in technology. This little device here can do so much. I mean, you could have a career, strictly online in providing. And because it also puts a lot of pressure on you to like score that job that is going to provide, it's going to allow your wife, girlfriend, significant other to stay home and do that. I mean, stuff's expensive. I mean, I guess if you go to another country, it might be a little different. But if you were here in the United States, it would be difficult to run one household on one income, or a household on one income raising a child.
And I would agree with you in most situations. However, I am perfectly in that situation to be able to afford all that with pending the apocalypse come. to be able to provide, say, single provider household. And, not going into what I make, but
Right.
that's where I've set myself up to be.
Let me ask you this question. Let me see if I get this number right. I'm pretty sure I have the number right in my head. What do you think it costs to raise a child from 0 to 18 on average in the United States?
For inflation. I know it was high. I believe it was somewhere around the 250K range when I looked a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's gone up to about $310,000. So that's like when I used to teach kids at Job Corps, basic economics, but also basic life skills, understanding needs, wants, values, all that stuff. I mean, stuff that we know that we just take for granted. These kids had no idea about. And one of the things we talked about is children, because these kids are in their prime. Their hormones are raging. Many of them get caught just like having sex out in the bushes, get kicked out for it. But they don't realize that, children are expensive, and that's just the average, like 310,000. Now, again, I'm not prying to know like what it is that you make. But that is just for one child alone. The first 18 years, again, on average, there's spikes and maybe sometimes it's a little cheaper on top of what you have for maintaining your home, and all the other stuff in between. So it's a lot, and people don't realize it until they're in it, and then they're like, whoa, like this motherfucker.
Without going into specifics, I am the 1% of America. Like, that's where I've set myself up to be. Like, if I cut back my frivolous spending, but I'm a single dude, I'm going to spend money on myself, the motorcycle, right, the cars, the guns, the video games. Without a doubt, I would not be eating hot dogs and mac and cheese. We would still be eating steak 6-7 nights a week, have the house, have 2 cars. I would get rid of the bike because that thing's a death trap, but it's fun.
Right.
And I would be stacking cash up without issue.
Well, I know where I'm coming for Christmas this year. Sleazy's house.
Did you forget I'm a Jew?
For Hanukkah, I mean, yeah. Sorry. Well, and here's the other question I've had too was your request for your standards being too high, right? I said, oh, maybe your standards are too high because you want someone who hasn't had a lot of sexual partners. But you've had a lot of partners. How do you reconcile that? Like your need for someone who has not, but like what happens if they ask you like, hey, well, what about you? I mean, and you're like, well, the number's really high. And they say, well, sorry, I can't do that. I want someone who also has been,
It's what you want. That's what you want. I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, we can go through how men who have had, we'll say, a promiscuous past versus women who have a promiscuous past treat the other partner in a relationship, right? Like, in the West, and I'm going to do it specifically, right? Because I have references to how other women in other parts of the world are just like, we don't care, as long as you're faithful to us, versus where we look at women now, where they constantly compare the new guy to the old guys, and it will purposely pick out any flaw or anything they don't like to say, well, I can do better. Men typically don't do that, right? So, I mean, do you mind if I talk about your relationship with your wife? Yeah.
You can, I guess, if you know something about it.
Do you nitpick or compare your wife to past relationships?
Mm-mm. Well, right. I mean, I will reference past relationships and how like she deals with things versus how they did, but it's but it's not like yeah, I mean, I guess very rarely, but it's come up, but it's never in like a bad way, obviously.
Right. Like
Right.
you'll be like, okay, yeah, I had this previous experience, but you're not like, well, my wife doesn't do this, so I'm going to compare her to a past relationship and use that against her as justification to leave her. Women, and I think you're seeing it on your TikTok debates, always compare past relationships to their current ones.
Yeah.
It, it's weird, right? Because we're talking about how men and women are different, while the entire world's telling us we're the same.
Right. Yeah. But aren't you comparing women? Like you're comparing all these women to your past experiences. So where's the difference? You're leaving the country because all your past ones have not worked out, but you're applying that logic to people you don't really know. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, yes, in ways, yes, but it
Mhm.
is behavior driven, right? It's not, well, she doesn't do X, Y, and Z like my ex. It's okay, I've seen these red flags before, right? If a group of people are acting the same way, you can say, okay, this probably isn't going to work out. And I'm not talking about comparing their cooking, not comparing. I'm trying to word this nicely. So, I know I'm an asshole, but I'm not trying not to be that much of an asshole.
Oh.
It There are patterns of behavior that you can identify in people, right?
Mhm.
Like if you know a dude who's always out drinking, starting fights, and you see another dude acting the same way, you're like, oh, this dude's probably going to start a fight. I don't
Right.
want to be anywhere near this, right? So I'm not comparing how they act individually. It is how they act in retrospect to the relationship, right? So like if a girl's out drinking frequently, I'm not like, oh, she's a terrible woman. If she's going to out drinking at a club with her friends and disappearing for 12 hours, there's probably more than likely something going on. And it's
Right.
because I have seen that not even just in my dating life, but in other people's as well. There's patterns of behavior that can be identified because we are creatures of pattern.
Right. Um, so when you go on these trips overseas, is I mean you're going as a way to sort of test the waters and see what's going on. You're not just making the leap, correct? You're going on trips to sort of see how things go, get kind of mingle in the dating pool a little bit, and then just see how I guess I mean and kind of see how these patterns do or do not manifest in these other areas. Is that right?
Yeah, so like I'm going out, and of course I'm taking it as a vacation. Like I'm gonna have my fun. I'm gonna go out and drink. I'm gonna do the touristy things. But overall, what I'm looking for is how the culture is different
Mhm.
and how different everybody acts in general, right? I don't want to move somewhere and be like, oh my God, these people are crazy. I should have never left.
Right.
Like I want to find something where I fit in as I am, as much as you can be being a 6 foot white man in another country.
Right. Yeah. Right.
uh, but
um.
it's and then, like I said, I've kind of referenced it. I'm not just packing up and leaving. I'm essentially what I call scouting parties to other places, right? Multiple countries, just staying for 3 weeks, a month at a time, seeing how I feel in that environment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you have to. I mean, I think you need to spend. Well, I think two things need to happen. One, you need to spend at least 3 weeks at these places, if not more. I mean, I think honestly, I would say 6 weeks minimum is probably your best bet. But also staying in places that are not like resort related, like finding an Airbnb or something or whatever the equivalent is, where you're mingling among, the locals. Because like people will come to Hawaii all the time. I lived in Hawaii for 10 years. People would go out there and they have a great time living on the resort, and then they're like, oh, we're moving, and they move there and they live in like backcountry Hawaii, and then they wonder why everyone hates them. It's like, well, because you had no idea what you were getting into. You stayed among all the white people in the safest part of the island, and then you moved to the most local, like aggressive area that you could. Um, in like the most redneck part of the island. So you didn't do your research. So I mean that would be my advice. It's just knowing that people make the mistake of not getting off the beaten path in places that they're planning on uprooting their lives for. And Hawaii is still the United States, but it's far enough removed from the general like American culture. Like obviously there's cultural similarities, but I mean there's a lot of Polynesian culture in there that if you're not familiar with it or familiar with the past or the history, you can get lost real quick, in more ways than one. So yeah, that's just my unsolicited advice for you as far as the trips go.
No, no, you're absolutely right. And if I break down my ideas, right, I'm going to spend a couple weeks just going out and checking out places, and to find two or three where I would. So I work remote. I can pretty much do whatever the hell I want, as long as I maintain residency in the U.S. All that legal stuff, right?
Yeah.
For the feds watching. And eventually, when I find those places, spend 2-3 months in those countries, actually waking up and doing my normal job, and then spending the rest of the time out and about touching grass in other places.
How do you feel like, so I guess the question becomes, what does your day look like without even like really knowing, like I haven't been to these places, like what in your head would be your day, your normal day? You wake up, like have some coffee or tea, whatever you drink, if you drink any of that, and then you do your little work. What does your day sort of look like, being normal and then into like the dating side of things? Like how would you go about your day?
Out of country?
Yeah. Like, do you like, have you thought about it?
Yes. So I primarily work second shift, right? So the transition over there would be a little different at first, but it essentially would be, instead of me waking up at 9 a.m. and starting work at 4 p.m., I would change that schedule. I'd be up at 4 a.m. And then I would just be out and about doing things that I haven't been able to do here in a very long time, right? So I moved recently to another state, and they have local butcher shops, they have shopping centers, there's people out all over the place. I am, more often than not, if I'm not making a YouTube video in the afternoon, I am out trying to find something to do with people, right? Like I have no issue going to the local butcher shop, talking to them. So I think a lot of that would translate over to me actually going out and interacting with people. And we're talking Southeast Asia first. There's going to be a lot of time on the beach, just relaxing, having fun, going out, local nightclubs, doing the normal things that I would have done if I was here, if it wasn't as crazy as it was or is now.
Okay. Is that like, yeah, I mean, that sounds like something like, if I were going back into the dating pool, like that's sort of how my day would play out too, is like I would have like my normal routine in the morning where, I always love going to coffee shops because there's so many people coming in and out. The baristas are easy to talk to. I mean, it's half their job usually. And then I can read a book, I can do some writing. And then I start seeing people like the locals. And that's why I always use that example, because I'm in a public place and then I start to see who's filtering in and out, and who's like, who day after day or week after week is coming in, like local office ladies, or maybe someone else who works like around the corner. And then we make eye contact, and then you start like, oh, haha, let me buy your drink or whatever. Those little things that people nowadays just, they don't do, like when, like as an example, I don't know the last time you were in a Starbucks, but Starbucks now has become this really weird. I go there to like just do like random paperwork. Like I'll be driving around, and at the end of my day, I usually stop at one and do like work orders or other paperwork. People don't even like talk to the baristas anymore. What people do is they have their app on their phone and they order the drink, and then the baristas just put the drink on the counter, or they put their food in this little cubby somewhere and they call out a name. And then people come in, they look at the label, walk out. No one says hello, no one says goodbye. It's the weirdest thing, like, to remove that social interaction. I mean, I thought that removing checkout ladies, like the cashiers at supermarkets, was weird at first, and now it's just a normal thing. But like a barista, like you don't even talk to them, like that's weird. That's weird. We're in a weird spot. But that's, I mean, to me, that's how I met like some cool people. It's how I met some of like people that I dated. Was these are just random people that were coming in and out of places that I really liked, that I spent time. And then we understood mutual interests, and or we worked close to each other. And it was just easy. Obviously those didn't work out, but you know, but still, like, what we had was a connection that I don't see a lot of people having nowadays. Like, I can see their face. I can see the little, muscles move if I say something wrong. Like, you just don't get that out of this or a picture online, you know.
Yeah, no, and it's not just coffee shops, it's everywhere. Like it's truly horrifying how many people are essentially antisocial at this point. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, granted, I'm a bit of a narcissist. I think anybody who has a YouTube channel is, but um,
Yeah.
like, I used to be able to go out to bars and have conversations with people. Now that you start talking to someone and they're like pulling out their phone, like leaning over to get away, it's like, dude, we're having a beer next to each other. I'm having a fucking shot next to you. Like, why are you acting weird?
Yeah. And I think that's what's even weirder is like, as a guy, like finding guy friends nowadays is like, when you're an adult, is just strange because you go your whole like 18 years and you generally the same people are around you. People come and go, but like I talked to like one or two people I went to high school with. One is my best friend, and the other like kind of comes and goes, and I don't really talk that much. But like making guy friends now, like I go to gym um with this dude that I met through my wife, like her friend's husband. But like even like that, sometimes if I find like it's just kind of awkward. Like I don't know, like even I feel stupid sometimes on how to find that right interaction, But I even feel it from him. Like this wasn't that hard 10 years ago. Like what happened?
Really wasn't. Like, okay, so working at bars and DJing, like, obviously I have that social aspect where I want social interaction and I can't get it anywhere. Like, even going, like, okay, I said I work nights, which means I have all day to do whatever the fuck I want. Even stopping by a bar at like 2 or 3, just, I want a shitty little fucking beer and to talk to someone for 10 minutes. The bartenders don't even talk to people anymore. And it's weird because that used to be like the core of our job, was to talk to people, keep them there drinking.
Yeah.
And now I'll go to bars and it's like, what do you want? Get your drink. They put it up there and they pull out their phone and do whatever.
See, and that's where I like this is where I'll disagree with you again. I don't believe that there's nothing, like no way to what did you, well, I forget what you just said. I don't know how I forgot in 30 seconds. But like
Oh, there
is it's just a problem I have. There's a lot of ways to connect with people and interact with them. But I think what's happened is exploring those methods, and it's probably not even your fault necessarily, but we need to find ways to help people connect in different activities, or we need to put ourselves into places that might be slightly uncomfortable, but like maybe this is just how it's done now. I don't know, but given your age, I understand better than anyone that you get to a point in your life where I don't want to put energy into that, because like here I am, like this is who I am. If people can't appreciate that, then what is there to talk about? Um, like you have your skill set, you have your likes, your dislikes. Like, why do I have to keep changing for the people around me? Why can't I just find someone who's just, who just is compatible? I wish I remembered your exact words. I feel stupid that I forgot already, because I don't want to misquote what you said.
Just say it. I'll probably remember what I said. And
Well,
if
no,
I
you're
don't, I'll
just
just be like, sure, close enough.
well, no, you're talking about how I thought you were saying like there's no way to like interact with people, or like, and I
It's not that there's no way. It's it's like they don't want to interact in real life. Like, you have to drag it out of them. And it's like, I just want to talk to someone. I don't want to have to drag conversations out, because it does make people uncomfortable when you're forcing a conversation with them to the point where, like, without sounding like an asshole, if you're just having a nice conversation with that bartender who are primarily going to be females,
Mhm.
we're in a day and age where that will get you canceled, right? Like I'm just saw the story today of that guy who performed life-saving CPR on a woman, and she's suing him for essay or trying to get him charged with essay. It's like, why would I risk that? Why would I, at my age, with where I am, why would I risk a lot of those interactions, right? So if I start the conversation, right, like I see a girl at a bar and I'm talking to her, or I go up and talk to her, it's, hey, how you doing? Sometimes you just get the weird look, I'm all right, and they look away. It's like, okay, yeah, I get it, cool, bye. But now it's gotten so weird. Like,
Well, can you say it's I mean, I'm worried about that stuff too, but I don't know if it would stop me from, trying to save someone's life or, get into the dating pool. Cause I mean, crazy people have existed forever. And what you learn really quickly in the restaurant industry is, people will make us stink about everything, not only customers, but, employees as well. I mean, we had, um, when I was working in a restaurant, we had this one girl, like, basically cry essay for someone like touching her lower back, going trying to get by her, and she made a huge stink. I mean, it was a long running thing because she wasn't a really great employee, so she was getting written up, and then this happened, and it became a whole thing. Um, but I don't think I don't think that represents women in general. I think it's become more common or I think it seems to have become more common because we have the internet, we have Twitter, Facebook that allows people to share this stuff really quickly, virally, most times. I mean, especially with all the Me Too stuff. But I don't think that should stop you from, or I don't think it should be something that you should be so worried about. Because I think if you do something wrong, you'll get fucked.
so
But
I think what you're taking is that I'm going full monk mode, right? Like I'm
no,
not talking to women anymore or anything like that. Like I'm still, we'll say air quotes, in the dating market, but I have zero expectations. And I set the limit. I set the boundaries of this girl. I was like, hey, if this becomes something, it's cool, but I'm not going to pursue you. Like if you do some crazy shit, I'm gone. Like there's no, we can do whatever. We can go out have fun. Like I was just last weekend or this current weekend, I was out with one chick. We just did the little Halloween party at a local bar, had our fun. It's whatever. There's no expectations whatsoever. The week before that, or I say a couple weeks ago, I went with another chick to the zoo, and they all know that.
gay. Sorry.
Whatever. I know what happened after. I don't give a fuck.
I know. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
But right, it's just I'm out having fun with zero expectations, and it's weird. This is what I've always told guys: don't treat women like they're a commodity when you're starting to date them. They have more respect for you when you don't. Right? If you act like a simp, you're going to get treated like a simp.
I can agree with that. And I think you're right in that having low expectations, I don't think having low expectations is a bad thing at all. I think you're going about it the right way. And like, I think number one is having a good time and having fun. Like, oh, I'm going to take you to a place that I like, zoo, a Halloween party at a bar, whatever it is. Like, if you're having a good time, she'll see you're having a good time. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least you're not wasting your time by, you know what I mean? Like you went, and even if you spent $50 to get there on both of you, it's like, well, money well spent because I had a good time and whatever, she was good looking and we did whatever afterwards. So win.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just setting that expectation where I'm not expecting a relationship out of this. If one happens and I meet the fucking perfect woman, I won't even say the perfect woman. I feed it words are hard sometimes.
Yes,
I
they
find a
are.
woman that I'm like, I'm compatible with, this will work. I'll 100% change my plan in a heartbeat, right? Because that is significantly easier on me than uprooting my life and moving to another country.
Right.
But I'm not actively pursuing that in a way that keeps me here when there's potential elsewhere.
I think that's probably the best option, and probably just great advice for people in general. And I think I've even said to some degree along the way is that, you know, like you said, having low expectations of things, but more importantly, doing things that you enjoy, and because ultimately your happiness is what's most important. Obviously, you want to make them happy, but that sort of comes a little bit later. Like, from what I've seen, it's like women are attracted to people, I mean, confident men, that sort of alpha male, because they know that the man is secure in what he wants. And if that's going to the zoo, or if that's, riding the Ferris wheel or the merry-go-round till you puke, like, cool. Like, but if you carry that as, if you carry that with confidence and like, hey, this is what I like to do, this is what we're going to do, and we'll have a great time doing it. It certainly shows better than someone who's like, well, we can do whatever you want. Like, I just want to do what you want to do. I mean, sure, I guess you could get some women like that, but I think you're going to find a more high quality woman by doing what you're doing now. And I don't know. I would almost make a bet that you do find someone, between now and when you might, like, what I could see happening is you going, having a good time, and then coming back from that trip and like finding someone. Like, you'd be like, oh, I love Thailand and it was awesome. And you start making plans to move, and this woman walks into your life and just blows you away. Because I think there's going to be an air of confidence about you when you come back, and whether that they can smell the pheromones on you or whatever, I think is going to help, like, kickstart that. I mean, there is some science to that too. I mean, you could
I,
go there, kill it, and
I'm
so
going to keep my mouth shut on that one because you're absolutely right and it works.
yeah. I mean, it's why I forget who was talking about it or where I saw it, probably in a YouTube video or something, about men married and why they get hit on more once they're married, and they have a wife, and it had to deal with just that, is like they're like giving off those pheromones basically, that women are craving, the single women are just craving. um so yeah, I don't know, man. I don't, I mean, I respect what you're doing. I mean, I think everyone should pursue these things if they need to. If they feel that, if you felt that, hey, you've exhausted all possibilities, you got to do what you got to do, because ultimately it sounds like you want to pass on your genes to the very next part of, to your offspring. You want to perpetuate your gene line, and you just, as of right this moment, the US is not doing it for you.
Yeah, and I mean, there's lots of issues with why I am absolutely terrified of getting married in the US. Like, we can go into divorce, any of that, but I just, I'm getting too old to deal with the craziness.
Yeah.
Like your camera froze again.
Oh,
Uh,
oh my, I don't know. Don't remove
so
me.
what's up, chat?
I
Guess I should look
guess.
at chat, right? I'm sure there's some angry comments.
Hold on. There's got to be a picture here that better represents how I feel about all this. Hold on.
A glizzy one.
Oh yes, here we go. No, the I lost my train of thought again. Stupid camera.
So what's up, chat? Well, he fixes his tech issues as a boomer. Affluent. Does Sleazy want a housewife or a partner? Blah blah blah. I say blah blah blah. I'm actually reading it. That's just how I read to myself.
We
Mixed
do
with other stuff
have
said is conflicting.
a super chat.
Yeah.
I don't usually read these, but Affluent's someone I know, and I thank him for the $10 super chat. He doesn't hook it up often, but he's a man I speak with often in real life. So, does Sleazy want a housewife or a partner, where she's met and time spent will dramatically change. Passport broing and red pill like lifestyle mixed with other stuff said is conflicting.
Yeah, don't take me as a red pill bro. Don't take me as a passport bro. Don't. And this is what pisses me off and why I never really talk about it much is I hate the red pill like grift. It's absolute garbage. Do I want a housewife or a partner? Both. Like I want someone that I can actually have a connection with, but I want her to also have the expectation that when we have a family, both our core values and morals are going to be raising that family, right? And I'm seeing with a lot of kids where they don't have time with their parents. They're raised by someone else. They're raised by the school system, and I think everybody in this chat's seen it, or at least heard you talk about it. Like parents aren't raising their kids; they're not spending time with them. That's something I want to do. That's what I want both me and whoever I marry to be able to do.
No, I think that's fair. And I think, like I said, I think you're going about it the right way. I like to push back where I can and say, like, have you really thought about this? Is this something that, have you exhausted all possibilities? Because I mean, ultimately you'll find that person. And I think concentrating on yourself and really finding the inner peace and happiness will bring that out. As a younger man, I was always fixated on making the other person happy because I thought, well, that's what I got to do. I got to make them happy. But I like essentially just railroaded my own life because I was so caught up in what other people wanted. I never stopped to think, well, what do you want, out of all this? And that hurt for a long time. And, but that's the other kind of trap of being a man is that you're taught from a very early age, like you're the guy, like you got to help, you got to provide, you got to be there. Don't be emotional about it, which is why, like, I think now, like we need to adopt a more rounded, more nuanced view of what all this is. I'm not saying you need to cry like a blubbering idiot every time something
No.
happens that might hurt your feelings. But I am saying like a good mixture of strong and alpha, and then, being in touch and being able to tap into the emotion when you need to is totally fine. I do think that there's a degree that we need to, withhold that emotion, but but I think most importantly, we need to figure out what is it that I'm comfortable with. Have I truly found happiness within myself as of right now? And if that's not the case, then there's more reflection to do.
Yeah, and I won't say I'm happy where I'm at, right? Because I'd love to be a millionaire, but I
Yeah,
am perfectly content with where I'm at. And I'll say content, right? Because I want that family. And I'll go as far as to say I need to have that family. Like that would complete me as a man. But I'm not just going to have a family with a woman who A doesn't respect me, doesn't respect the role of having a family and what that entails. So I'm not going to settle. Right? Like,
right.
and it's weird, right? Because again, this goes into the whole red pill thing that I absolutely hate. And it's a great grift. And don't get me wrong, I could make a ton of money and have a very successful channel, but I'm not doing that. I don't care for it.
Mhm.
But it's like I want that woman that is going to be what I expect out of a family. And I'm not going to settle. And I'm not going to tolerate these ratchet ass hoes to just have a kid.
You say wretched assholes.
Well, I said ratchet, but
Oh,
that too.
either
That
way.
works.
Have you thought about this was a comment I saw in chat, but like, have you thought about meeting a woman like at like church or something? Do you go to church? Are you a church goer?
I've met women at church. They're
Really?
it might have been different back in the day, but they are some of the most passed around women I've seen in a very long time.
Really? But what if they're
Yeah,
born again? What if it's something like a, hey, this was like, maybe I was passed around like a peace pipe, but I'm ready to go back on the shelf. Like
if you're
maybe.
used, you're used. Like that.
Well, you're
That
used.
amount,
That's what I mean. You're
well, right,
used.
but a man does not have the same trauma. We'll say trauma, right? Just to make it sound better, does
Okay.
not carry that same amount of baggage. Baggage sounds better. That a woman carries from being with a bunch of other dudes, right? Like, perfect example. I was with a chick for 7 years,
Mm.
legitimately tried my hardest to make it work. When I say I tried my hardest, I spent more time than I should have trying to make it work. I should have ended it years ago.
Okay.
It we were having an argument. She was screaming and yelling. I was calm as shit because whenever we have an argument, I'm not yelling because neighbors hear a guy yelling at a woman. We all know how that goes, especially when you live in the South. The first thing they're going to do is call the cops, and that's never a good thing. She literally looked at me, and no lie, after being together 7 years, I don't get why you just won't hit me.
Ooh.
Trauma from being with other dudes. She wanted me to hit her. And it's like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm still that dude. I'm still, well, I should say, I'm still not that dude. I'm still the old school dude. It's like, I'm not going to hit a woman because if I hit a woman, the consequences legally are going to be awful. And the physical reality of the disparity between men and women is going to be awful. Like, it's,
Right.
and you hear it a lot. Women saying they can take a man. It's like, no, you cannot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's some that can. I mean, we all know Gina Carano exists, but like,
Yeah, I mean,
you,
Gina Carano could fuck me up, but I would still land some serious blows on her.
right. Right.
Like, but we're talking about a regular fucking dude who's overweight and an MMA fighter.
Right. True. True. Yeah, apples to apples. I think even she would probably admit, like, I ain't getting in the ring with Nate Diaz. Like,
Yeah, no.
he's gonna ruin me.
No, we see what happens when a man gets in the ring with a woman, and if Chat
Right.
knows, Chat knows.
Right. Um, yeah, it's yeah, I mean, maybe it's worth another try too. Again, I don't know. I don't know if you do go to church or anything, or if you're a religious man. You know, you said you were Jewish, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily practicing. But maybe it is something that would be worth trying, especially if you haven't done it in the area that you live now. And said I don't know, because I do think that religious women are oftentimes that kind of woman that you're looking for, that is going to stay home and take care of kids and not necessarily going to be like the, oh, I need to be the CEO and I want to make more money than you and blah, you know. They're more of like a want to be mom, raise kids, all that.
We'll have to get Green Rocks and Mephisto to fill you in on the Jewish princess thing.
Oh,
uh,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but as far as that, I can't bring myself to go to a temple. And I have maybe three in within 2 hours of me, and they are flying the rainbow banner high and proud, and I'm no. Like I keep my little Torah back there, but I am not like I'm not over religious, but I am not supporting that in any way, shape, or form.
Is the Jewish faith like leaning heavy into that stuff nowadays, or?
They kind of are.
Oh, okay.
Some more than others. And I would expect it out of the more normal temple that I used to go to, and I actually learned a lot of shit there. But when I saw it at the Orthodox temple, I was like, no, this is fucked. I can't do it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think what it comes down to most often is like when you're finding that partner, it's not so much. I think it has more to do with values, as Affluent said. Is like you want, because I don't think being aligned in the things that you like is important, as especially when it comes to raising a family, is, well, what do you value? Like, your values should be in line, because you guys still might have different approaches to something, but the end game is still the same. And perhaps someone in the religious environment might have values that align with you a little more. Again, I don't the Jewish princess thing, I've heard of it. I don't know like how far it
It's real.
goes.
It's real.
You know, and whether that means like girl boss or, you know, someone who sleeps around too much or whatever. I did know one girl in college who everyone called her a Jewish princess, and she was just a spoiled brat, is what it came down to. Um, but it kind of sounds like, I mean, if I'm being reductionist about it, it kind of seems like you want someone who you could spoil. Maybe not. You maybe don't want that person who is a spoiled brat, but you would want someone who, on your own terms, you would probably shower with attention and also like gifts to provide for them. Am I far off?
And you nailed it. But the preface to that, and kind of what I want to dig into, that I want to spoil that isn't asking for it,
Right.
right? And that's where it gets tricky with how ingrained feminism is in the West. And that is my key problem. Right? That's where I personally take issue. Again, me personally.
Right. I mean, I hope the sort of sad like dating culture is not present in these other countries, because they, you know, I think largely the issue is technology, right? When we have the ability to meet anyone anywhere on our phone, like I can go to another country and just, you know, maybe I don't know, I've never ever used Tinder. It's never been on my phone. But like maybe it works in Thailand and in other places, and all you gotta do is load it up and say, hey, I'm looking for this person. Nope, nope, nope. You know, I mean,
And if you okay, so I was gonna ask you if you want to know, but this is what we're talking about. I had a buddy of mine. His name, I'll skip his name on stream.
okay,
Very good buddy. I've known him for close to it. No, well over a decade now. From the Philippines. It's like, yeah, it's weird. Dude's married, has his kids, he's all set. He's like, get the app. Don't tell them anything. You know, just say you're just looking to talk to people you're going to visit. Don't tell them you can date them. Don't do anything. He's like, just download it and say you're still living in the US. Be perfectly clear you're not going to send them money, and just put that as the first two sentences in your bio. Don't say anything else, and see what happens. Right? And I'm guessing you haven't seen what a woman's Tinder in the US looks like.
no,
Hundreds of messages.
you've gotten hundreds of messages.
The girls on Tinder in the US get hundreds of messages.
Oh, okay.
Within 24 hours of just me dressed like this, saying, I'm not dating, I'm just looking to meet people, and no, I'm not going to send you money, and yes, I'm planning on visiting the Philippines. I had more messages from girls than these women get from dudes in the US.
Wow.
It was insane.
Why is that though?
I'm going to say a couple of reasons. At least in a lot of these countries, they've noticed that men have actually started adopting a more Western approach and not approaching women as much and not wanting to be the sole provider. And from talking to expats and other people who have done this, they have actually been taught and raised that you should look for a man who wants to provide for you and take care of you. And this is how you treat that man. Right? Like, I'm willing to bet most single dudes have, I'm going to say probably 60 or 70% have never received a compliment from a woman in their life that wasn't an immediate family member. And these women are like, it doesn't matter if you don't date me. I want to cook for you. I will take off your shoes. I will give you massages. And it's like, holy shit. If an American woman said one of those things, I would be like, you're out of the average. We're gonna take a serious try at this. But I mean, it goes back into what I'm saying, that women aren't in the US aren't told how to treat a man. They're told what to expect from a man. And it's one-sided.
Well, do you think that these women, I don't know, like from where I sit, it looks like the women that you're describing in the Philippines have been run through themselves. Um, and they might come with some history and baggage that you might not particularly like, or you might just be turning a blind eye to.
No, I mean, in some cases, I'm sure you're absolutely right. But there is a huge cultural difference, right? So, in places like the Philippines, uh, oh fuck, what's it called? Essentially, birth control is shunned upon by the family.
Mm-hmm.
The rate at which women have sex is significantly lower. Like I think the studies and the polls and everything I've researched in other countries is that 20 to 40% of women are still virgins, right? And I'm giving it the widespread because that's where it goes from high end to low end. I wholly expect that to be being American. I expect that to be less than 20%, but I'll give the benefit of the doubt. It's not America; it's an entirely different culture.
Yeah.
And so, if you have a society that values reserving sex for partners for exclusivity, the rate at which women are going to be ran through is significantly less. It's just mathematically going to be true.
Well, I hope so. I mean,
I do too. And like I said, maybe I'm wrong as shit and I'll end up spending the next 10 years bouncing around countries, but the odds seem better over anywhere else than they do here. And that's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the perfectly green pasture, the perfect woman. I'm looking for something where I have better odds.
I still think you have the best odds here. I mean, I know you have a problem with Western women, but I feel like here, like you're just, I mean, we have the ability. I don't know. I don't know. I can't fully articulate what I want to say. Um,
Well, I'll go up in a little rant. It's like,
but
okay, so in the US, we have no fault divorce, which I think is the worst thing to ever happen to marriages in the US. That's why we have 50% divorce rate. That's why we're expecting the lowest number of married people in the US by 2030. That's why we're expecting 50% of women to be in their 30s, pushing the age of geriatric pregnancies. And we're looking at that, I think, being between 50 and 60% by 2030. Like there are going to be a ton of single women who can't have kids who have followed the girl boss lifestyle. And if we look at other countries and compare that, where they don't have no fault divorce, they do have fault divorce, and divorces are very rare. It encourages the women to be like, yeah, this isn't the guy I want to spend my life with. Like they have, when you add no fault divorce, it adds so much baggage to a marriage that you have to worry about versus countries that don't have that. They have to actually say, can I live with this man? Can I work with this man? Can I deal with this man? And it works the same way with men. Can I deal with this woman? Can I live with this woman? Do I want to be with her? It puts another level of scrutinization that I think the US is lacking.
yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, the no fault divorce thing I think is bullshit and has definitely contributed to a higher divorce rate. Um, which is why I think the most important thing you can do is align your values with someone else early, because then things start to, like, those little trivial things start to slide by the wayside. You're not thinking about them, and people who don't align their values, they build resentment and hatred towards one another over stupid shit. And especially when you introduce a child into that, it becomes way more difficult. um have you ever, I mean, this sounds stupid, but like, have you ever lived in Utah? Have you ever been to Utah?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you should consider living out here, because I mean, a lot of Mormon women are, they're very traditional in and how they want to raise their family. Not all of them, but a lot of them can be very, very traditional in that way. Something to consider before you jump ship. It could be a decent move. And we have the beautiful mountains here. Yellowstone's not far away. Just think about it. Might be something. And you could abandon Judaism and join the very, very awesome Mormon religion. But
I'm gonna pass on that, at least that last part.
That's fine. That's fair. No, I mean, I think the most important thing that you can do, and I think maybe it's something you haven't totally thought of, but I think the values thing is really important. And I think the more you search for that, especially when it comes to like understanding what you want how you want to raise your child, those are conversations you're going to have with someone, because it's unlikely that you'll find someone who is much younger that is willing or who is that person that you're looking for. It's possible, but the pool is much smaller. So you're probably going to get somebody who, as you said, is in sort of this geriatric childbearing years. But
medical terms.
Okay. Medical terms, of course. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. But it's not impossible. Like I said, my wife was 33 when she had our first, and then our second was a year and 16 months after. Sorry, it was 16 months after. Sorry, I'm math good. And then, yeah. So I mean, we had children later. It's totally possible. Both our kids are super healthy. It's not unheard of, and I feel like medical advancements and just maybe us as humans, people seem to be able to bear healthy children a little bit longer. But obviously the ideal situation is someone in their prime, right? You don't you don't want to roll the dice too much, but yeah.
No, I mean you're right. It's so hard because right now talking to girls 22, 26, 28, and it's the same feminist thing. Like, why do I need to stay home? I could just work. We can hire a babysitter. I don't necessarily trust a babysitter with my kid in the US in the 2020s to 2030s. Right?
Well,
Because now I'm hoping they have the same moral values and they're not going to be some crazy weirdo. And it is getting out of hand.
And that is, I think, something that you'll have to figure out, and something I would say you really got to think about, because you need to, raising kids, besides it being super expensive, it's what you're doing is you're trying to raise a human to become independent and leave the nest, right? So in so many ways, you have to be willing to take a lot of risks with them. I think Jordan Peterson said it. Your job is not to stop your children from doing things dangerous things. Your job is to give your kids the safest environment to do dangerous things. And part of that is relinquishing control, to your spouse, to people who will watch your kid. This is another reason to consider living close to family. Like if you're close with your parents or your grandparents or aunts, uncles, or siblings that have kids, it's important to be there. And if you don't have that option, obviously this doesn't apply. But for those that might be listening, it is important to keep close to your family because they can act as babysitters and they're free most of the time. But relinquishing a little control to someone, again, that you have to vet. It's another skill that you need to develop is I need to be able to size this person up in an interview, bring them to my home, or bring them, I'll bring my kid to a coffee shop. We sit there, I watch how they interact. Are they doing well? This is all stuff that you might not even realize you had to consider, but you do, because It's dangerous. It's hard. It's sad. It's happy. All those things in raising a kid. But also it's because it's not just you. And this is why values are important. It's also your spouse, because you guys need to be symbiotic in this whole thing. And so,
I'm about to grill the shit out of you.
What's that?
I'm about to grill the shit out of you.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Have at it.
So when we first started this conversation, you were asking me, well, how can you vet these women so quickly? The same thing you just advised me to do in terms of finding someone to watch a kid, which is significantly less important in terms of finding a woman, right? Is you get to vet a woman as hard as you would vet that babysitter, because that's you're building up the core of that kid's foundation so that when you release them, they can be a functional adult.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going to be, God willing, 18 years. I don't know if I can raise a kid till they're 30.
You might have to. That's the risk you take.
I hope I do. I hope I do a good enough job. I'm praying I do. Right. But in the long run, that is significantly less time than finding someone that you're going to be married to until the end of your life.
The difference is, so your babysitter is not going to be raising your kid. They're there for a short amount of time while you and your spouse have a date night. A lot of the times in this situation, the child will be asleep. They might be reading him a story. I mean, that's when we'll use a babysitter. Usually is like nighttime stuff, and we'll go out to the bar or something like that. So they're not a replacement for you. They are just something that's there to help you get out and you guys, because I still think that the number one thing in a relationship is you and your spouse. If you guys have that connection, your kids witness that and they see healthy relationships, and you can build off that. Your kids are a very close second, and they're like almost on the same tier. But you need to have a healthy relationship with your spouse. That's why it takes so long to really find a meaningful partner, because you need to align those values. You need to understand who this person is that you're about to dedicate your entire life to. Because after you guys have kids and the 18 years, or so you hope, is done, you guys are going to be, in some regards, strangers, because you haven't had time alone since that child was born. It's been, your time alone is like a 30-second vacation that you can take when the kid is like taking a crap for the first time. Or, when they finally get down to bed and you have 1 hour before both of you pass out, but there's not enough time in those short, like, you have to learn to have great moments in that short amount of time. But after that 18 years, you guys need to be best friends, close enough where you can pick up where you left off and be like, okay, now where are we going? What vacation are we going on next? What show are we going to this weekend? Like, that's why it's so, that's the long-winded answer as to why take your time with your partner, but you could vet someone in a very similar way that you would standing next to him at a table or behind a bar. Like, oh, I know this guy's gonna be a dickhead because of X, Y, and Z. And I wouldn't trust him with my kid. Or, oh, she's kind of weird, but like, she could still watch my kid fall asleep and then sit there and watch TV for 2 hours. Like, that's really the big thing for me.
Right. And that's kind of one of my things of why I would prefer a stay-at-home partner, at least until they're in school. Right. Because if we're both working, that's at least 8 hours a day that kid is with somebody else. Right. If we're both working full time. Right. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I'm not requiring her to stay at home with the kid and handle everything until that kid is 18. Like, that's too old school for me. Right. If you want to go out and have a job, even a part-time job, I'm not going to say no. That, like, the only thing I want is that in that kid's informative years, they're with someone who is, for lack of better terms, trusted, that I trust with my kid, because it's going to be our kid. And I don't think that's too much to ask, but it seems like it is.
Yeah, I do think it is a lot. I don't think it's a crazy request, but I do think that you limit yourself on that pool. I don't know how much moving to another country expands that pool, but I hope that your trips like give you some indication as to what that might be, because it's I mean it is 2023. You know, like I said, to some extent, I think there's real feminists out there, you know, that want or that are not crazy, and I think there's traditional or trad wives, whatever the fuck they're called. Like I think those people exist in a modern age. Like they're not gonna be dressed up in the polka dotted dress, washing dishes and all that. Like
I mean,
100%
I
of the
wouldn't
time,
mind.
right? And I mean, but like I said, I think but I think you could make the argument that some of those women they're expecting something from men that, like as you said, like they're not they don't know how to treat men. They just know what they need from men. Um and that's again, I think you might run into the same problem eventually. And I don't necessarily think that changing the scenery is at least to a different country will solve that. I think there's so much, again, I don't like using this word. I think there's so much diversity in this country that you could find someone that does fit that bill, or you might need to make concessions on what you're willing to, because again, this is a partnership. Maybe there is some concessions you need to make as far as like what that list entails. I mean, if you're or possibly suffer not finding a partner.
But if you had a chance and an opportunity to find a partner that you would be compatible with, and you wouldn't have to make any concessions, would you at least try?
Yeah, and again, I guess I don't necessarily fault you for trying. You have the ability to. You work remote. Money's not necessarily an object. Like you should do it. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, you're young, like 34. Like, yeah, you don't have family, but this is the time to do that traveling. And if nothing else, if you didn't find it, at least you traveled to a place that's not the U.S. You saw different parts of the world, which I think is really important for people to get that worldly experience, uh, because you might learn something in those other countries that you like, that you took. Maybe there are some cultural things that you can take from maybe a place in Europe that you visited, or the Philippines or Thailand. And then when you come back and you meet that woman on that off chance, and you stay in the United States, you say, hey, they had this awesome thing that they would do in this little tiny village in Thailand. I want to integrate that into our life because I thought it was so cool. And like, it's just like connecting, like people miss out on that stuff. They just get stuck in the Western way of thinking, as you put it. Like it's just uh, but there's so much beautiful culture out there that we just don't get exposed to, and something that I think once made the United States so great is that the actual melting pot existed, where we could bring all of these cultures together and sort of make this amalgamation of American culture, that because it brought together so many different people and gave people hope. And I think that's, if nothing else, you could find that out there.
Yeah, and like I said, worst case scenario, I have some of the best vacations of my life. Right?
Yeah.
Beautiful beaches, surrounded by beautiful women. Whatever fun happens, happens. It doesn't fucking matter. If that's the worst case scenario, I'm still gonna do it. Like, and I applaud you for doing these horrendous TikTok live streams. But I've noticed it a couple times. The more you talk to these women, and if can we agree that women are addicted to TikTok and it's the worst thing for them?
Yeah. I mean, I think, yes. I mean, I think both men and women have a huge problem, but it seems to me that it's mostly women who get sort of sucked into um, the culture of it all and like making these videos. Yeah.
Right. And you have seen how the women are. And it's like, don't get me wrong. If I find a woman who is off the internet and doesn't pay attention to any of this shit, just wants to have a family, even if she wants to work, I would, in a heartbeat, take that over uprooting everything I have here and leaving. Right.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, I'm gonna leave so much shit here and have to sell it and deal with it. I would rather not have to.
Right.
I'm 34 years old. I've accumulated a lot of shit. Probably more than I should, but
I think the good news is it's easy to think that so many people are tied into like what's going on in the world, and even TikTok, because TikTok's like super popular. I think the one good thing about TikTok is that it does play to your interests. So if you meet a girl who is on TikTok, or let's say just browses TikTok, but likes crocheting videos and dad jokes, like that will probably be your feed. She's not going to see all the garbage with, the political stuff that comes across our feed on Twitter or whatever. Like she's going to be in tune with that. And I don't think the vast majority of people aren't tied into current events the way we are. We overload ourselves with the trash that's from the mainstream media, or just random YouTubers or TikTok, whatever it is. Like we purposely do that to ourselves, and I think skew our algorithm in ways that I don't think most people can handle. Like I don't think most people can handle the amount of negativity that we consume. And it's probably even bad for us.
Yes, but all those books on the shelves, historically, and even today, and the most recent, the how often do you think about the Roman Empire trend?
Yeah.
It's like men have always been that way. We care about worldly things. We want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like we actively seek that out. And whether we acknowledge it or not, it's somewhere ingrained in our DNA that we want to learn about the rest of the world so we know what the world has, what we need to avoid, and what we should look for.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's how I would explain that. Do you think about the Roman Empire? It's like women don't think about that at all, right? They don't think what's going to happen tomorrow. What do I have to worry about? What's going on in the rest of the world? They quite literally are just living in la la land, and I kind of love that about women because it's a sign of innocence, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not, you don't have that baggage, and I do think that men should carry that burden and should protect women to their fullest extent. But I feel like that gets abused too much. It doesn't matter where you live, right? It doesn't matter what country you're in. That is going to be abused, and for the most part, with the exception of weirdos complaining about it, we don't care. We accept it. It's our burden as a man. Be a fucking man and deal with it.
Yeah. And that's when people talk, I haven't gotten into the toxic masculinity debate, but I know it's coming eventually. People always make the argument like, well, women went out and they hunted, or women. It's like, yeah, I understand there's always exceptions to the rule. But I was like, part of me just wonders, like, what's the problem with the roles that we've established? What's wrong with a man providing for their family? Because again, there's not a rule that says women can't, right? It's like the argument, like everyone has rights. Like, we all have equal rights in this country. But like, how are we in a place now? I mean, I know why, but how are we in a place now where we're going to complain about a world that was built mostly by men?
Yeah, it's first world problems. People have lived too comfortably for too long.
Yeah.
Like even second world countries. Let's look at Thailand or the Philippines. They have actual issues, right? They have to worry about stuff. They don't have time to bicker and complain about being misgendered.
Yeah.
Like that's not their concern.
Yeah.
Like these are first world issues that people are blowing up and making their entire personality. And it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. And I think too, like even when you take like the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's like you don't see women lining up on these front lines. It's all men that are out there that are, like, because again, like they understand like this is our role. And now for many reasons that's not the case, but like, even in the United States Army or the different armed forces for the United States, like you're not seeing a majority of women that are lining up on these things, because I don't blame them. They don't want to be there, like, again, what is wrong with accepting the role as a nurturer, as, because I mean, and I don't, like, again, I want to be clear. I think having that goal of wanting that woman in your life be your partner is a great goal. That would be a great woman, someone who wants to be home and who wants to raise the children and be that, to be your child's like rock, because it's what's lacking, and they would have a strong dad that's out there providing for the family, keeping a roof over their head, all that sort of stuff, so I do like that. um yeah, and I mean, it's a whole completely obviously different discussion, but it bothers me that we've gotten to this point in history where we're so comfortable, and now it's like, oh, now it's time to invent a problem.
Well, I don't think it is an entirely different conversation. I think it's just one of the spokes on this conversation,
Mm,
right? Like the number one thing I hear about out of women's mouth is, I will not be submissive to a man. It's like, okay, what about deferring to your man, right?
right.
And a lot of them, again, generalizations, won't even do that, right? And we see it. We see it publicly, right? We see where a woman will run her mouth off to another man and then expect her man to jump into a fight she started, and that dude gets smoked,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like the I forget the dude's name, the dude that was just stabbed in front of his girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yep.
it's I'm not asking for women to be submissive. Just have deference and trust that your man knows that other men will fuck you up and will not think twice about it. Right? Like, we know that the world is a shitty place. We know there's a lot of good, but we know the world is also very shitty. Like, we know what men are capable of when they don't have respect for humans.
Right.
Just trust us that we know what we're talking about. Like, that is really it. And like, even if we're wrong, don't criticize us in public. You let us all you want when you're at home. Call us a dumbass, call us a retard. We'll sit there through it,
Right.
right? But it's like, to perfectly sum up what you said, when men are going to war, women will never question them because they know if their men lose, they are ruined, right? They know that comes with severe consequences. But for some reason, when it comes to day-to-day life, they refuse to accept that. It's only when hell breaks loose that will women, and again, generalization, not all of them,
Right.
because I'm an asshole, but
Huh.
in day-to-day life, women won't defer to a man's knowledge. They would rather ruin themselves for the most part than defer to a man.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with, marriage of convenience, that, or modern dating has sort of destroyed what used to be a longer courting process, and we're not those things spawn out of not having values aligned, because when your values align, you can talk to your spouse about stuff and not have to worry about the retaliation against it. There is a mutual respect that if I say something in public, you're not going to take it as disrespect. You would say, "Oh, let's continue this later," and then the husband will look at the wife and go, "Yeah, you know, or there's things happen, and even if you do have a misstep, it's not the end of the world. It's not oh, now I got to worry about uh, divorce, or I don't have to worry about you sneaking around because I fucked up." Um, and again, it's because we've, in many ways, trivialized, um, well, I'd say, going back even farther, we've trivialized human life in general, but also just, again, the dating process. We took speed dating and like hit it with fucking fentanyl. Like it's like it's ridiculous. I mean, that's all Tinder is. It's speed dating online. You don't even have to go anywhere. You can sit your fat ass on the couch, swipe however you want, and then, oh, I got a date. Do I think online dating has a purpose? Sure. I think it's a way to meet people. But we've trivialized sex in general and what it means to have like an intimate relationship with someone, and also what it takes to, you know, to date. It's hard, like dating, and that's why I think my little bit of pushback on you is dating is hard. Like dating is difficult in the beginning because you're trying to meet a complete stranger and find what it is that you guys might have in common. And it might not be apparent at first because I think people try and look for like, oh, you collect Pokemon cards? Oh, so do I. Oh, you play video games? Oh, so do I. And they look for those first. And obviously those are important, right? But they got to remember too, like, especially at our age. I mean, I'm a little older than you, but
We're both old.
in your 30s, you need to start thinking long game, especially if you don't have any kids of your own. You got to start thinking, well, what do you want out of life? Like what are things that you value in life? Those are the questions you got to start asking on the first date, because those aren't even intrusive questions. They're just, they're simplistic enough where you're not prying like, hey, do you want to have kids? You're just saying, hey, like, what is it that you value in life? Like what's most important to you? And then you might be able to weasel your way into other things. But we've been like, the dating game has been reduced to swipe left or right, and that's where people end it. And they hope the rest is sort of on cruise control the way they met people. I'm not saying you think this way. I'm just saying even the people who realize it to some extent have been conditioned to like stop before I think they should. I do think there's amount of, not hardship, but there's an amount of difficulty that goes into dating and even frustration, because it's a total stranger. You don't know who these people are. You don't know what their past is. And we all know too, even asking the question of like, well, what's your past been like? You can't ask that. You can't ask a girl about her partners. Are you fucking kidding me? That's it. See ya.
Well, there are ways to ask without asking, but
Right.
that comes with experience. But yeah, no, I don't disagree with you at all. I'll even go to a step further to think the internet's been the worst invention for humanity ever.
One of,
like,
yep.
It does it. I'm going to specify women because that's the topic we're on. I think it does something to dudes too, but not nearly as bad or in a negative way, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I think looking at naked women on the internet and going through Instagram and tapping the little fucking heart button, all these thoughts is terrible for dudes. I think it is amplified in women because women in general like attention. And when you're on the internet, it doesn't matter if it's Instagram or anything else, it gives you a level of attention that you can never get from one man. Yep. And they get addicted to that attention. And it's awful. Like it's truly despicable. Yeah. And the internet is my career. It is what's funding everything I do. And I absolutely hate it and wish it was destroyed.
It's funny. I think the same a lot when, like, I've said on like my lives, I'm like, it's funny that I talk about the stuff that I talk about because in some ways I'm trying to put myself out of a job. Like I want people to go out and experience their life. I don't want them to sit on the internet and, just consume endless amounts of YouTube. But here I am making YouTube content that people watch. And most of it is long form. It's like 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes. But the point is I want people to see, especially the smaller clip stuff, or maybe even the debates, is like, I want people to not be afraid to voice their opinion if they need to. And, B, like recycle those. Like if I want to be able to replace the people that left. So one day, whoever the viewer might be, affluent, for example, who's watching, I hope he never comes back again, but I want him to be replaced by someone else that needs that same message. Maybe he got everything out of it that he needed, and now he can start his own thing. but no, I feel you. It's, and I 100% agree. And you're right. You know, there's been plenty of studies on how, I mean, because not only has everything on the internet been like gamified to give you hits of dopamine, but like women are they're very much into like social interaction and what other people think of them, you know, in their relationships, where men are just more involved with things. So, you know, it makes sense, and they're captured by it much easier. Uh, and again, it's an argument for many different issues that we're seeing nowadays. Increase uh, well, I don't really want to get into that, but I mean, you know what I'm saying. It's just
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said, and I think avoidance from the internet is really good. And I like I said, my wife is pretty normy. She's not involved in the culture war stuff. She doesn't have, like, her and I talk about stuff occasionally, but it's in a very like a very neutral sense. Like, she doesn't like to get into politics and stuff. But you know, she doesn't have like the doom and gloom view that I can have a lot of times, or doesn't understand what's happening with Israel, Palestine, or trans stuff in schools. Like, she has no idea, you know. But like every now and then I'll bring something up and say, "Hey, did you know this is happening?" She's like, "What the fuck? Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "Oh, pretty screwed up, huh?" You know, and she's like, "Yeah, it's weird." I think I told her about I saw the video of those furries at that high school, like with like the collars and then the drag queen. I was like, "Yeah, there's people like at this high school," and she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, you fucking believe that?" She's like, "That's stupid." You know, my wife's pretty liberal. You know, it's just like we've been to a drag show before, but she's like, "That's just fucking wild. Like, that's not cool." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, right?"
I'm
So
the only person that's never gone to a drag show. Sometimes I feel like it.
probably there. I mean, it's it. I've been a couple times in one. Well, one was a burlesque show, which I guess is just drag. And one was like a legit drag show, and they're funny. Like, it was more of a comedy show than it was anything. And but like being to them, like when you go to one, and then you think, okay, why are these people asking to do this in front of children? That's the question, because you would know what it's like to be there, and it's like it's totally an adult environment, even if they're not sexual in nature. Like, why would you want children in front of this? You know, like, it's the only question you have to ask, and you would realize very quickly it's not for them, and they're weird for wanting that.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut out of respect for your channel and what might come out of my mouth.
You should go to one. They're fun. They're like they're just like they're funny, like, because ultimately it's a caricature of women. You know, like, it's like this is what they think women look like. And in some respects, if the acting is good, it can be a good time. Um, but it's certainly not for kids. It's an adult event, 100%.
Look, I've seen Rocky Horror, and I'm just like, yeah, I never want to experience that in my life.
Right. Well, and not all are like that. You know, some are totally like harmless, and like I almost want to say that's more like burlesque, but the you know, but some of, I mean, and actually burlesque, I guess the one I went to, there was actually women involved, so like it was pretty sweet.
So
But
an actual burlesque show, not an actual drag show.
right, no, yeah. So
I've been to
yeah,
burlesque shows, like
right.
with women. Look, I was a bouncer. I worked at bars. Some bars were, we'll say, 21 plus guaranteed. There were no questions. We were not. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So no, like I promise you, I have dated plenty of women. Some of them were the dredges of society, and I'll leave it at that. They would do very well on OnlyFans today, but back in the day, they're still the same.
Well, that's the other thing that's probably arguably ruined everything. I mean, it's part of the internet, but OnlyFans is another thing it's sort of made like the whole independent woman thing. It's sort of taking it to the next level. It's like, well, just look at all you pathetic losers giving me money to see my feet, or you know, booty pictures or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I mean, and that's why I think like men are a huge part of the problem, because they keep paying for that nonsense.
Yeah.
And then
And that's why I prefaced this entire show with I don't think it's all women's fault. I think a
yeah,
lot of responsibility falls on men. Right.
yeah,
There haven't been actual fathers and there aren't actual dudes. They're caricatures of men. They pretend to be men and they go and pay for this garbage.
yeah,
And it entices women to do this. And a lot of women, air quotes, a lot of women make a lot of money, but the rest of them don't even make what they make working at McDonald's part time. But they are selling their bodies for the price of a fucking cheeseburger. And they don't even realize it.
yep, yeah. It's wild. I mean, that's like, and I think people are like, well, what do you care? I'm like, well, ultimately, I don't. But like, it doesn't mean I can't have a say about it. Like, I just don't think it's something that people should be celebrating. Sure, it's there, but people shouldn't be clapping that you're a porn star. Like 15 years ago, being a porn star was like, ooh, all right, Susie, even being a stripper, like, oh, well, nurses, they go through school and they're stripping. Wow, great. Lots of dignity you have there. And that might be a boomer take or whatever, but you know, and I don't want to hear that shit like, oh, it used to be a noble profession. Did it? Did being a prostitute, like, was it ever a noble cause for someone? Like, even if you were like doing, was it something in royalty? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
I posted something inside chat. I'm not sure I want to disclose that publicly, but
oh,
yeah, like I said, I've been with the dredges of society. It's
right.
happened.
Yeah. I don't know, man. We're in a weird place in the world. I'm glad we had the discussion about all of this because we usually just do it through chat when I'm talking to someone else. So it was nice to finally sit down and get it sort of out on the table. I don't blame you for doing that. And like I said, I think for no other reason, you get some banger fucking vacations out of it. You will meet some really interesting people, and I think you'll take a lot away from it at the end of the day. And I think you'll be a better person for it ultimately. Um, but yeah, man. Is there anything else you want to cover while we're chilling or what?
No, I mean if anything, like dudes, take care of yourselves. Don't ever get in a state of depression over a woman. Don't do it. That's really it. Like I hate seeing that like dudes getting rid of themselves over women. It's stupid and I hate it. There's always other options.
Um, See, sorry, I'm checking out. I never read chat on these shows. I don't know why I'm doing it today. I think it's just bad habit. I'm seeing Dempsey said, "I'm curious. When was that? I'd like to read about that being serious." Oh, they said yes. It was a much high regarded profession at times in history. Yeah, I would like to know that too. Please leave please DM me a link with that information. I would love to. Yeah,
I would
affluent.
say it's been common in societies, but it's never been propped up as something that was applauded by society. Like I can't think of a single one. Like every nation still, with the exception of essentially America at this point, still looks down on prostitution. The Roman Empire did. They made fun of people who did it, right? The Greeks did it. The Persians did it. The Egyptians did it. They all shunned that type of behavior. And it's this weird 2020 thing that's like, go girl, get that back.
The only thing I can think of, the thing that immediately comes to mind is the show Deadwood. I feel like the prostitutes in that show, like they had some sort of like, I don't know, like they had some sort of status in that town that I don't know, like it wasn't certainly wasn't good. Usually the outcome of that profession there in that show was pretty bad for them physically. But it still seemed like they held some sort of power in there. But again, um, commonplace does not mean like like means that you're doesn't necessarily mean you're revered. Like just because it's around a lot and it's there doesn't mean like, oh, you're good. But it looks like he's gonna DM me that. So but yeah, man, thank you for joining me on this. I'm sorry of our scheduling conflicts. It's just been a crazy couple days at work, and I got a lot done. I'm actually like pat on my back because I got a lot of shit done today that I needed to get done on top of the disaster that was happening this morning. But a lot of paperwork. I'm like kind of ahead of the game, which is great for Wednesday or to going into Wednesday. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to push back a little bit. But what do you got coming up, man? Do you have anything you wanna promote and talk about?
So I have my channel where I don't talk about any of this stuff. Uh, I try to get 2 videos out a day, at least Monday through Friday. And Fridays I've usually just been streaming because it's my day off. I'm gonna have fun. Uh, Whatever the newest crazy thing happening in society is in terms of entertainment, I'm probably covering it. And I'll make a lot of jokes.
Yes.
If you watch my stuff, I make fun of everybody for everything because laughing helps. But yeah, no, check it out. I don't think I have anything in the works tomorrow, so I'll be on the fly making videos, whatever happens. But check it out.
Nice. Yeah, please. The link is in the description for all of his stuff. Please give it a shout. He works really hard. A lot of passion that Sleazy has. Like it shows through in his work. So make sure you support him. Anyone I have on this show, like I obviously believe in them and believe in their message. So please, anytime my guests are on, click their link. At the very least, hit the subscribe button. Follow him on Twitter. He's got some good things to say.
Don't ever follow me on Twitter.
um, but yeah, that's gonna do it for us today. That's it for us. We're out of here. It's late. Okay. Bye everyone.
Easy like
Toodles.
Sleazy.